Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Before we get started, just wanted to remind everybody to support us if you have a chance or if you can. Even $1 helps, and we have a link in the description to a website called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just a way to donate to us and support us. Again, any amount is helpful so that we can keep putting out content. And there's also other ways for you to support us in the show notes to this podcast or on YouTube in the description. In today's podcast, I wanted to go back to the PwC story about them hiring 100,000 employees and most of those employees related to ESG. I have a lot of problems with this because I think PwC is taking credit for a lot of things that they're not necessarily changing anything. 100,000 employees over 5 years is probably the normal amount of employees they're going to hire. But also on top of that, I don't think they're being honest. I think they're just trying to take credit for being on the front of ESG. I think they're trying to get additional government work. And I think the Big Four accounting firms at this point are nothing really other than an extension of the government in whatever country you're in, just because they're so heavily regulated and the way they keep tripping over themselves, they just run into more regulation. So I don't really see them as anything other than a government regulated entity. I mean, basically part of the government, but the only difference is that if you make partner, you can make more than you do in the government in whatever country you're in. So that's the one upside. But I mean, the downside is you don't get necessarily the benefits that you would if you worked in a government in the short term. Over the long term, you will. But I think it makes it difficult to work for the Big Four accounting firms if you're a very proactive person, just because you can spend a lot of time and just accelerate you can get promoted on a linear path, but it won't be necessarily based on your output. It's just going to be on a typical progression. But to go back to the PwC thing, they're going to hire 100,000 people over 5 years and invest $12 billion. How is this different than any other year? I don't think it's any different. They're just trying to get their ESG quota in there, trying to make it seem like they're really investing in ESG because they see that governments are going in that way. The G7 and et cetera, UN, whatever, everybody's going in on this ESG stuff. The activist investors around the world are getting involved in ESG. PwC wants to be on the front end of that. And I mean, I got to thinking about this because I'm like, how is this any different than any other year? And I don't think it's any different. And I think this is just another area where the Big Four accounting firms are going to run into more regulation, because I think they keep on lying about this type of stuff, about their environmental impact, their net zero, their diversity, and they're just trying to take advantage of social issues to make more money. And I mean, that's not different than any other corporation, but I think the Big Four are more egregious than others. And I think to be honest with you, I think they collude with each other to implement these things. I mean, just look at their Twitter profiles. They're almost exactly the same. They release almost all the same stuff. And so I think they're going to run into issues, but also on the diversity standpoint, I think they're taking advantage of ethnically and racially diverse people by trying to say that they're going to hire people. But who's going to audit that number? Who's going to really hold the Big Four accounting firms to task on that? Nobody. There's no global regulator. There's no local regulators that are going to penalize the Big Four accounting firm for lying about diversity. And I think potentially if this path continues, I think there will be a regulator. And if there is a regulator that enforces ESG and also diversity, then I think that Big Four are going to be some of the most penalized companies. Because if you look at the tops of their organizations, it's not very racially or ethnically or otherwise diverse, and I think they're going to get penalized for it. And I think if you are ethnically or racially diverse person, you're better off just starting your own accounting firm and trying to win some of this government work rather than letting the government not letting the government, letting the big four accounting firms take advantage of your race and market that to governments and clients to win more work. There's more upside to you, and this goes back to my government point. There's more upside to you to bid on this work yourself, build your own career up, build your own practice up. I mean, it's okay if you use the big four accounting firms to get started, but then you should band together with other people and start your own practice rather than letting the big four accounting firms take advantage of you, because I think that's what they're doing here. And I don't think there's anybody that's going to hold them to task. So I would encourage you to start your own practice, either that or negotiate up front with the big four accounting firms and tell them that you're worried about them taking advantage of you and they expect higher pay as a result of them trying to take advantage of you and your identity. Because I think that's what they're doing. They're co-opting people's identities to help them win more work in government institutions and from corporate institutions. And I think that's wrong. I think that's more of whatever they're trying to combat. Specifically, I think PwC, because of this press release, but also because Tim Ryan. I think Tim Ryan is, how do I say it? I don't know. I think Tim Ryan is a hypocrite. I think it's a bunch of BS, and I think the only person he cares about is himself and his paycheck. And I honestly don't think he cares about actually helping people, in my opinion. Otherwise, he would resign and put somebody else in his place. But of course, he's not going to do that because he's spent his whole life in the big four accounting firms. And he's going to use whatever he can to win more work for his firm. If that means co-opting other people's identities and taking advantage of them, then that's what he'll do. And I think that's what he is doing. And he also knows that there's currently no regulator that's going to hold him to task for taking advantage of that and using that to win more work. So that's why he's doing that. But that's why I see more regulation coming for accounting firms as they continue to take advantage of people's identity to win more work when nobody's holding them accountable. Is the way I see it. But those are just my thoughts today. I think it's important for people to own their career and don't let the big four accounting firms take advantage of you. There's other opportunities, or you should ask for higher salaries. You should ask for higher pay. There's other opportunities out there. Get the most money for yourself. Don't let the big four accounting firms take advantage of you, because I think that's what they'll do here. That's what they always do with regards to lower level employees. So I think that's what they'll do, and I think they're being purposefully misleading in these areas where there's little guidance right now. So that's just my thoughts on that. And I think it's going to be more important to keep an eye on this stuff, because I think the big four accounting firms continue to lie in this area, and they continue to take advantage of this area of the social justice, and then going along with it to profiteer, because they know nobody's going to hold them accountable in any of these spaces, because these are emerging spaces. But that's a podcast for today. Make sure to subscribe, stay up to date, and support us financially through the Buy Me a Coffee link if you can. But if you can't, thanks for listening.